Mobility Commission. I will be joined later on by some of my colleagues at the Commission, including Nina Slingsby, and we will be joined by some guests as well today. For now, we want to cover a few general housekeeping items. First of all, please, we ask you to remain on mute. We also ask, just out of kind of respect for folks who may not have the best bandwidth, if everyone could please take yourself off of video for now. When we go to breakout groups, we'd welcome those who feel comfortable putting their video on. But for now, just take off that video and remain on mute during this part of the session. We want to welcome you to please use the chat box. And in fact, I'd ask everyone if you could just take a moment to just type in who you are and what organization you're with into the chat box, just to say hello to everybody. In this first part of the session, I will be presenting on the latest cutting edge research on apprenticeships. And I invite you all to please use that chat box to ask questions, which we'll address at the end of my presentation. Then finally, just a notification that this part of the webinar will be recorded, so please be mindful of that. And the intention is to put this webinar on the Social Mobility Commission's microsite, socialmobilityworks.org. So we want to start today by talking about what is happening in the world. Why are you here? We're going to touch on the known benefits of apprenticeships, look at some findings from the latest report that the Social Mobility Commission has put out, and then apply that to you and your context. So we'll be asking you, reflecting back to you the survey results that you were asked to complete last week, and then we will be going to breakout rooms where you will have an opportunity to really take these insights and apply them into your own organization session. We'll come back then at the end and share our collective findings together. We will cover off the logistics of this later on in the call, and you should have received dial-in details for these breakout sessions. So, starting with what's happening in the world, we want to first take a moment to recognize times are hard. COVID-19 has put pressures on just about every section of society, and businesses and employers are not immune to that. We know that for many, the challenge right now is simply struggling to survive. Perhaps it's reorganizing your workforce, perhaps it's trying to predict the unpredictable. And we know that for apprenticeships, apprentices in particular, you may be thinking about reducing them, trying to figure out how to deliver them online. There may be heaps of challenges. We also know that the lockdown and the economic downturn is hitting young workers the hardest, and that under 25s are really bearing the brunt of the economic strain. And nobody basically in our society is immune right now, but you're here today because you see the value in apprenticeships and you recognize that apprenticeships can be used as a tool for building back better. And we know, how do we know this? It's because we know that diverse apprenticeships make better business. How do they do that? Well, apprenticeships can improve your branding. They can improve that customer satisfaction, client approval, and signal to future talent that you are an employer that people want to be at. They can improve your staff's well-being through employee engagement, loyalty, and development. They can future-proof you, and like all good diversity strands, it can create a competitive advantage and give you a diversity of thinking that will allow you to adapt and innovate. And finally, through business operations, we know through research that apprenticeships can increase productivity and increase staff retention. They can be a cost-effective way of upskilling your staff while still delivering the activities that you need to run your business. So for all of these reasons, apprenticeships are quite an obvious step and an obvious tool. But they can also impact individuals' lives while helping your bottom line. We hear in our report from Jack Sudworth from Newton Abbot that he talks about the stigma that a lot of people might have and the idea of an apprenticeship, but he reflects on how apprentices are actually educated people who will go far. And again, we see this in evidence. We see that companies and employers often say that apprentices lead to a more motivated and satisfied workforce, and 80% of employers say that they lead to higher retention. So We know apprenticeships can be this positive benefit for both businesses and for social mobility for individuals to progress. For a range of reasons. Earning while you learn, they're an alternative to academic-based study, give a second chance for adults who may have missed out. They can be a retraining tool, and they can solve the class pay gap, which if you've been on some of our other webinars, you'll know is very significant. But are they? Are they delivering on this potential? Too often, we at the Social Mobility Commission were starting to get worried that we just assumed apprenticeships are being used in this way and are hitting these deliverables, and we wanted to investigate whether that was actually happening. So we did what we do at the Commission. We did some high quality, in-depth research using some administrative data sets, which essentially what you need to know from this is it was a robust index, a live register of who's getting an apprenticeship and who are they and what businesses are offering them. We want to thank our partners both at CEVA and London Economics for their contribution to that research. We then took that research, and today we've coordinated with and collaborated with some fantastic organizations who are going to be helping us lead the breakout sessions later on in the webinar. So what did we find? Well, unfortunately, what we found is that the people that can benefit the most from apprenticeships are missing out at every single stage of the journey. And in addition to that, what that means is that employers are missing out on the potential that a diverse apprenticeship offer can give to their workforce. Since the levy began, employers have simply fallen into the same old trap, and the numbers really reflect it. Disadvantaged apprentices are missing out on getting onto apprenticeship. They are less likely to be levy funded, and the worst affected group are older women from disadvantaged backgrounds. So older in this context meaning over 25. Okay, but even then, when a disadvantaged person gets onto apprenticeship, what happens then? Surely we would suspect outcomes are going to be the same. Unfortunately not. We found significant gaps in quality and the value of the training by social background. Just 16% of degree apprenticeships, which is the fastest and most expensive option, are going to people from disadvantaged backgrounds. And we even found gaps within the same apprenticeship at the same level by social background. Apprentices studying in ICT, construction and engineering in particular, were going to receive less training than their more privileged peers. We then also found that apprentices from disadvantaged backgrounds are routinely being overlooked for progression opportunities, and they're not being tapped by businesses to continue up that ladder. So what is the result? Well, unfortunately, disadvantaged apprentices have lower career earnings, but here is the most important bit. When a disadvantaged apprentice can overcome these relentless gaps and finish their training, they benefit the most. They get an average of 16% boost to their earnings versus 10% for others. And important for businesses, they are more likely to finish their training on time. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that apprenticeships can be this positive tool, but the wrong people are getting them. And you are here because you recognize you have the power to unlock this potential. Josiah talks to us about how the barriers for people like him can be relentless, that you have to have a lot of resilience. And unfortunately, this is what we hear a lot from apprentices trying to break in, that we know it's not that people from low socioeconomic backgrounds are somehow less capable or less talented, but they may face barriers that their more privileged peers don't, and they may not always be nurtured in that talent. So you are here today to figure out how can you play your part to unlock that potential. And smart companies realize that human capital is the key to business success. In some of our previous Social Mobility Commission research, we found that in 7 leading law firms, employees educated in state schools are 70% more likely to feature in the top decile of performers. We also know through Accenture's Getting to Equal report, an innovation mindset is 6 times higher in the most equal cultures. So we recognize that we want this diversity and that apprenticeships can be a significant tool of how to get there. So now today, what we're going to turn to is learning how we can realize the opportunities that apprenticeships give. So I'm going to pause here and see if my colleague Nina Slingsby is there and if we would like to pick up any questions in the chat box.
I'm here, bear with me. Let's see if there's anything that was, you have to excuse me, I was scurrying around behind the scenes on something else. So there's nothing that's come out in the chat box. We've got lots of people who've obviously shared their details, but at the moment everyone has been enjoying the presentation, Lindsay. So what I will do is go through some of your opinions that came back to us from the survey that we sent out. So Lindsay, if you wanted to flick to the next screen before we dive into our workshops. So I sent a survey out at the start of the week because we thought it'd be interesting just to get us almost a quick sense of how things were feeling with regards to apprenticeships. And obviously this will be sent out to you in detail, but I just thought it would give you some snapshots of what you are feeling at the moment before you start to take that deeper dive into your workshops. So 58% of you said they felt that potentially the levy was influencing how organisations are rebadging current training programs. So are the training programs that are going through as apprenticeships a true word in the sense of an apprenticeship? I thought this was quite an interesting statistic around why apprentices aren't or rather apprentices are going to those from a more privileged background. And it came out clearly, you can see from the agree bar, which are the green ones, that there's general consensus that maybe we're not, as a collective, not collecting the data on who gets the apprentices. You're not targeting individuals from a lower socioeconomic background, and you don't have targets for apprentices going out for individuals from a low socioeconomic background. There wasn't so much as a sense of whether you had an unconscious bias for recruitment. So I think it's a lot more about the targeting and the data. And then the other few things which came out interesting was around there wasn't really a sense of the footprint. So half of you felt that actually there wasn't a disproportionate of apprentices being offered in large cities or not. There is a sense that actually apprentice programs aren't being regularly assessed. And it felt that actually 35% of you said that actually when individuals finish their apprentice program, they don't actually get anything else on top of usual employment support. But those of you that do offer extra support, 50% of you offer apprentice networks, which is great, and 28% of you offer career coaches. So there's some things that obviously you could take from that in your discussions when we move into our breakout rooms. And then the final point, this is more really a building on, I suppose, with what Lindsay was saying about COVID-19, that when organisations start to re-recruit or are recruiting at the moment, you felt there was a clear steer towards individuals looking for experienced hire. That was your number one priority. But actually, interestingly enough, 52% of you said that apprenticeships would then be your second priority. So that's definitely pleasing to hear. So from the findings from this very quick survey and obviously the information that Lindsay's talked to you about, we now want you to go out into your breakout rooms. So you will